Well, welcome to the Business Spotlight series. My name is Tanner O'Brien. I'm a senior partner here at Action Coach in Central Texas. Today I'm sitting down with my guest, Shayda Torabi Howell, who is the founder and CEO of Restart CBD and THC. Super excited to be jumping in, talking a little bit about business, entrepreneurship. I don't know, this kind of crazy journey of what most entrepreneurs tend to go through, some ups and downs, all that fun stuff. So, Shayda, just thank you so much for being here. Um, Let's start with just a little bit of background. For those that are unfamiliar with the business, give us kind of the context of what the business does, and then we'll kind of use that to backtrack a little bit on how you went into founding it and some of the background there. But first, tell us a little bit about the business itself.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks for having me. Of course, Tanner, happy to be here. Fun fact, born and raised in Austin, Texas. So I've lived my entirety of my life right here in Central Texas. So super proud to be a business owner and founder of Restart CBD and THC, as you highlighted in the intro. We are, for all intents and purpose, a cannabis brand. I think that might be, a shock if people are in Texas, like, what? Cannabis is legal in Texas? The double click into that is hemp is legal in Texas. I view hemp and marijuana as, different sides of the same coin. And so when Texas legalized hemp in 2019, which the boring definition of what that entails is anything less than 0.3% delta 9 THC on a dry weight basis is kind of, legal fair game for me as a business owner to create products and ultimately sell to consumers. And so we have a brand. It's 6 years old this August, since August of 2018. Founded it with my two younger sisters. So we're also a family brand, women owned, and we sell high quality cannabis products. We're essentially a dispensary in North Austin, and we also do e-commerce as well. So that's what Restart is, and that's what we offer to our consumers.
Beautiful. I love it. So what led you down kind of this path for the industry, wanting to get into it, wanting to found the business? I don't know, what was your background leading up to founding the business?
Yeah, of course. So I think it is not fair to acknowledge that I very much do love cannabis. I feel very blessed and privileged that I get to represent this industry and have these conversations to the extent that I get opportunities like this to speak publicly about my business and my passion. And obviously, being born and raised in Texas, the trajectory of working in cannabis was not something that I necessarily had when I was in, high school, aspiring college graduating. And so my background professionally and, from a school perspective is in marketing and branding. So I started my career with a marketing degree and was working specifically in the live music capital of the world. I love live music. I was working in event production and music production specifically when I first started my career, and that kind of dovetailed into some tech work. So if you are familiar with the very exciting startup scene in Austin, I'm very proud of like that chunk of my life. I was one of the founding employees of WP Engine, which is a managed WordPress hosting platform. Another very unsexy name, but very important. Most of the websites are powered by WordPress and inadvertently then powered by WP Engine, just being this leading hosting platform. So shout out to my old employer, but really they helped create me and gave me a lot of great life experience. And my parents are entrepreneurs, and being here in Austin and just having that startup ecosystem, excitement working for this startup. I mean, when I joined WP Engine, I was employee 13. When I exited them, they were 700 employees. They had offices in San Francisco, New York, Ireland, Australia. I mean, we were just hyper growth. So for me, like coming out of college, that's my first job out of college. I'm like, oh my God, I'm strapped to a rocket. This is awesome. And so really got to cut my teeth and create my personal brand, which I also do a lot of personal branding. And so that was kind of the precursing to, hey, I like marketing, I like branding, I like, really bringing products to the market and helping educate and market the consumers on, closing that gap. What is the product? What is the need? How do we talk and fit the consumer to their need? And like I said, love cannabis. And so was obviously, maybe not obviously, but I was obviously consuming cannabis this whole time. And for me, it really turned into a business opportunity. That's like a fancy way of turning, lemons into lemonade. I was in a car accident. I was hit by a vehicle as a pedestrian, fractured my pelvis, and was thrust into traditional Western medicine, steroid shots, opioids, you name it. The doctor was happy to prescribe it to me. I was in my mid 20s, otherwise the epitome of health. And here I am navigating chronic pain. And my sweet mother she was like, "Have you heard of CBD?" And I did a quick search and I was like, "That's in weed. And I'm smoking that every day. So I must be good." And she's like, "No, I think CBD is maybe different." And so the long story short was that was really what, put my family and I on that path of exploring CBD. Of course, a couple years later, federally hemp would become legal with that same language that I articulated earlier. And then a year later, Texas would become legal. So we were one of the first operators, license number 13 here in the state of Texas, and had no idea it would pave this pathway for me to be working in cannabis in this capacity, especially in Austin, Texas. But again, like I said, very passionate about this plant, both as a recreational alternative to other adult use products, as well as just helping me manage and take care of me from a wellness perspective, from a health perspective. And so we're super happy and grateful and honored that we get to share our story and connect with our consumers and hear their stories and have that conversation around cannabis and education and what that looks like for safe access to Texans and specifically Central Texans. But yeah, just love the plant. Horrible accident made the situation turn into something opportunistic, and went from there. But I'll introduce a little bit of a caveat too. My sister, kind of, I think what really has set us apart was I obviously have this like really, open cannabis relationship. My sister, my middle sister, Sydney, she swam collegiately for the University of Texas.
Mm.
She then was an Under Armour sponsored athlete. She just wrapped up 4 years of sponsorship and has become like a fitness content creator influencer in her own regard. And so she always looked at cannabis from this like big question mark, like I'm getting drug tested. Oh, that's, not for me, the stigma around it. And when she started seeing how I was using cannabis for a more holistic approach, that really gave her an encouragement to start looking at cannabis differently from her perspective. And so again, I think our yin and yang approach is really what has allowed us to have as much success as we've had in the market building our brand, because we're real people who have real challenges, and we approach it from that transparent perspective, and are just again really happy to be championing this conversation in Texas.
Oh, that is so cool. I love the background and the detail that you kind of went in there and being able to tell that story. Um, Clearly, there was a moment in there where you shifted from working for others and then now running your own business. And for many, that can be a exciting time, that can be a scary time, that can be, insert whatever emotion you want to plug in there. Um, so I'm curious for you when you made that leap and you shifted into, all right, we're now going to build a business for ourselves. What was that experience like? So just on the business side, how was that transition for you?
Everything you said times infinity. Man, I mean, yes, like I mentioned, my parents are entrepreneurs, but very small business entrepreneurs. But I think I grew up, and maybe a lot of people can relate to this, in the Shark Tank kind of era and mindset. And so it was always this optimism of like the American dream of, oh my gosh, like I could do that. Why can't I do that? What can that product or that idea or that service be for me to step into that ownership? And on the other end of that, obviously, I think there's a lot of I quit working for someone else 9 to 5 so I could work for myself 24/7, 365. And I love it. I embrace it. I wouldn't have it any other way. But I definitely think the thing that comes to mind when you ask me that question is the oh shit kind of brace for impact. As much as I was admiring working for myself and building my own business, nothing truly prepares you for that. And I left out a component of my story, which is perfect to interject at this point. I had left WP, I was working for a WordPress specific agency. I was head of marketing for them. We were working with certain enterprise clients. And unfortunately, that just like didn't end up being a fit. So I was kind of, I don't like this job. Do I go look for another job? Do I, hold out? Like, what is that wrestling? Also the saying too, I feel like I resonate with don't quit your day job for your dream job. And so just like really trying to figure out what am I supposed to do with my life? Like, what's happening? And at that point, I had been in the accident already. I was navigating my healing journey and had started the idea for Restart at the encouragement of my mom. She's like, you should make a website. Like, you should try to sell this to people. Like, put a label. Because my mom essentially was making me products to help me heal and navigate
Mm.
when I was navigating the pain. And so that put us on the kind of, like awareness of who else is selling these products and how are they selling, and oh my gosh, nobody's really selling this, there's not a lot of education. So we saw a gap in the market for something that we were becoming aware and experts for. And I think that too in of itself is like a oh shit, where I remember looking kind of like, okay, well, there's not a lot of people doing this. So what are the rules? What are the laws? Like, how comfortable should I be speaking about this? Like, hemp is still, cannabis. And in Texas, it honestly, 6 years ago, a lot has changed, but it was definitely like a dirty word. I mean, still is. There's still a stigma. Like, I don't want to pretend that there's not a stigma, but back then it was especially like, this is like borderline maybe illegal still, and I don't know what's going to happen, and like, does this really have legs? So again, I don't want to quit my day job for my dream job, but we'd started Restart, and with my background in websites and hosting, it was, yeah, I'll make a website, I'll make some brand stuff, we'll make a logo. And honestly, to this day, this is like our original logo, and we've kept rolling with it. So, sometimes like don't overcomplicate it. Like, what's the company name? What's the logo got to be? What are the colors? It's like, just put it out there. Obviously, you want to have some thoughtfulness. You don't want to just put anything out there. But again, I think for us, it was just this oh shit of like, should I, shouldn't I, should I, shouldn't I? And then I was actually laid off from that agency job. They pulled the plug for me, when you're kind of like, should I, shouldn't I? And they're like, well, we're going to decide. And so the way that I've been articulating it, over this journey is I was kicked out of an airplane, and I was free falling, and I was, skydiving for the first time on my own. You know what I mean? Like, I think when you come from a startup experience, you're kind of in it with other people. And so it's high when it's high and it's low when it's low, but you've got kind of the team of people. And so I had the training of like, how do you maybe build a business? Because I had that front row experience, WP Engine, but obviously doing it for yourself is like a completely different exercise. And so all that to say, I was kicked out of a plane, and I had the oh shit moment, and I was like, oh my gosh, okay, you remember you can like pull the trigger, you can like have, the balloon, you can kind of start steering, where you're going to land. And so I would say that has been the journey, the joy, the learnings, the, highs, the lows of just, I wouldn't say I was ready, but I was definitely open to that uncertainty, and I think leaning into that uncertainty. And obviously in my nature industry, there's uncertainty every day, so I haven't gotten away from the uncertainty, and I'm sure any small business owner can relate to that. There's still a lot of unknowns no matter what industry you find yourself in. But yeah, I feel like I was prepared, but nothing can truly prepare you, and so you just kind of have to step into that fear and do it anyways.
Oh, that is fantastic. I especially love the, that you stop working 40 hours for somebody else to go work 24/7 for yourself. That's something that we talk about a lot. It's going from employed to self-employed is I stopped working 40 hours for somebody else to go work for, myself for 80 to 100 hours a week. And I find that this boss is much worse than the one that I had before. And that's
100%.
kind of just how that journey goes, but it's okay. And you continue to navigate through and learn the lessons
Of
along the way.
course, of course.
So, oh, that's fantastic. So let's talk a little bit about kind of the business a little bit deeper, and then we'll kind of move into a few lessons and things like that along the way. But I always like to ask the general question of like, who primarily does the business serve? So I know you've kind of hit on this a little bit so far, but I always like to make it as crystal clear for the audience as possible. And the way I like to frame it is, if I'm in the audience and I'm watching or listening to this later on, how do I know I'm a really good fit for your products?
So specifically, you're asking about like who would be a good client or how the business is run. Like, I just want to get some clarity on how you're framing the question.
Yes. So for kind of for products, for the things that you actually sell, who is the best ideal customer client for your business?
Got it. Okay, of course. So I think with our products, there is like different levels of awareness, of course, and education when it comes to cannabis in general. So I would say the first kind of pass is, are you kind of curious? Do you know something about it? Have you heard, maybe positive things about it? You've got a friend, you've got a neighbor, you've got a whatever. But there is still a stigma. And so we kind of like wrestle with people being like, oh, that's not for me. I don't see myself with cannabis. And so I guess the first pass is, I think there's a lot of education that we offer that we hope comes across both in this conversation and just in conversations in general throughout the community, of seeing cannabis in that different light. Because from a like technical perspective, there's a lot of different cannabinoids. And the cannabinoids are what have these functions in our body. I think the most well known is THC from a psychoactive experience. And then there's CBD on the non psychoactive experience. And everything in between is kind of like a big question mark. And everybody kind of assumes CBD is THC and it's all like this drug, right? And so it's like helping dismantle that kind of conversation for people and getting them to understand some of the nuances, which it can sound overwhelming, but I am trying to make it a little bit more digestible to understand. But I think that's where we see people having the most like, oh, that could be me. I see myself actually relating to what you're talking about. And so going into some of those things, average consumer is coming in looking for kind of help with three areas, I would say. And I'll also caveat this because the nature of my industry, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a medical professional. This isn't medical advice, this isn't legal advice, right? But we anecdotally have customers who are coming in for three things. They've got pain, they've got anxiety, or they're having a hard time sleeping. And so that is usually where someone is starting out from. So really you're asking like, who is that person in the audience? It's everybody. Like, the punchline is it's everyone. We see and have the pleasure of helping customers from all walks of life. So I'm talking, all genders, all ages, all just like ailments, all, levels of comfortability with cannabis. And so people are coming in because, like I mentioned, they have a neighbor who maybe is using it for, their pickleball elbow is kind of like the, fun, easy way to relate these days. Everybody's playing pickleball and it's like, oh my gosh, your body's getting aches and bruises. Okay, so maybe you're not ready to consume something internally. Well, topicals are a really great, stepping stool to explore the products that we offer. So you got people who are looking for kind of like topical relief, physical relief, pains, aches, things like that. Then the next moment I could have, a story that comes to mind is I had this woman come in. She's probably in her like 50s, 60s. She's like, I haven't slept in literally 4 days. Just massive, bout of insomnia and just struggling through it, like desperately wants to sleep. And I think I can say this, melatonin has shown to have some, data and reports come out recently that too much melatonin can throw off your body's actual, process to create melatonin. And so there's a little bit of like re-looking at some of these modalities that we used to maybe reach for when we were having some of these issues and now replace them with other modalities that are maybe a little bit more healthier or plant-based or holistic based. And so this woman came in and she's like, I'm having a hard time sleeping. What can I get? And so we helped walk her through the right cannabinoids, the right products based on what she was kind of indicating to us. But I would say it really is anybody who kind of falls within the parameter of having those three primary concerns and being open-minded to cannabis. And then from there, we like to fit people into the right product, whether it's a consumable product, so something you're consuming and you're ingesting. Maybe it's a smokable product, something that you're inhaling. Maybe it's a topical product, something you're applying on your body. They all have different properties. They all, kind of penetrate into your body differently. So meaning they provide different relief. And that's kind of where we start walking people through. So it's a really fun conversation to have because I think everybody struggles and navigates and deals with those things. Obviously, like I mentioned, my own personal story dealing with chronic pain. For me, that's really where I resonate a lot with our consumers is just being able to see what their needs are and helping guide them towards a solution that makes sense for them versus just being like, cannabis is this blanket thing. It's all THC. It's all getting high. You must drive, a VW van. You must like eating at Taco Bell. Like it's not the stoner stigma as I'm trying to communicate, right? It really is your mom, your neighbor, your best friend. We even have pet products as well. So a lot of pet parents, anxiety, fireworks, thunderstorms, loud noises, traveling. People like to administer it to their pets as well for the same kind of properties that humans are finding relief with it. So product for everyone, which I feel like as a marketer and business owner is like, you can't be everything for everyone. But I'm like, unless you're cannabis, you really can't be.
Well, I love how you take that approach of, especially with, it being a, what we'll call it a generally, a newer industry, with legalization just happening in the last handful of years and things like that. The education, the guidance that you provide, I think that really helps connect the dots. As I'm sitting here listening to you go through that, it makes it much more approachable, especially for someone that hasn't experienced that type of thing before. So it's really cool to see that. Which then kind of lends me just I'm curious about competitors in the space. So again, everything's kind of a little bit newer with being 6-ish years since legalization. What how is the competitive landscape kind of developed over the last couple of years? And do you see it as competitors, or is it, the more kind of quasi competitors you have out there, the better awareness and education? How do you view that within your business?
Yes and no. That's a really good question and a really hard one, I think, for our industry because it's almost like we were painted in such a bad light for so long that now that there's more and more support, it's like, look, there's so many of us. Like you can't get rid of us. There's so many of us. But I think the unfortunate reality, which great timing of, this conversation just in general, there's a lot of federal movement happening. So to interject a little bit, our language from a Texas perspective is influenced by federal language from the Farm Bill. And so there's a Farm Bill renewal this year that's being looked at. And so we are paying attention to federal language as well as state language. And so looking at some of those lenses is really where I think, unfortunately, looking at competition can almost like hurt us because there's so many actors. And while there is regulation, we're seeking more regulation. And so, in the gap of enforcement, there are good actors and bad actors. In addition to Restart, I'm also president of the Texas Hemp Coalition. So, for me as a business owner, getting involved in advocacy, I've taken a more aggressive approach probably to helping control the narrative and represent the industry and be a good leader, which I think just as a business owner in general, obviously, depending on how volatile or I don't know, just like embedded in legislation your industry might be, that may or may not be something for you to consider being involved in. But for us, it was kind of like a non-negotiable. I knew that being in Texas, being a woman in cannabis, being in cannabis, those were all points of like, you have a voice and you have to use it. And so you have to lean into this conversation. And so kind of going back around to your point of competition, unfortunately, when we're going and we're having these advocacy conversations, like I said, we're dealing with stuff federally. I am prepping for a Senate hearing next week. And part of the conversation is, well, what about these bad actors? What are these bad actors who are making what you do all look murky? And obviously there's concerns for consumers. And so that further, kind of cripples us as an industry to have to, one, deal with these bad actors, two, over educate to consumers. Also, I think as a brand, we try not to play into the fear mongering. So there's a lot of media headlines. And I think, again, just like good practice for business owners in general, don't trust the media and like don't pay attention to politics unless it is a part of your business like mine. And in that case, only pay attention to your business's politics and don't trust the headlines. So there's always something, popping up on the news. And I see our industry is very reactive, kind of getting into, again, some of those competitors on the long tail who maybe aren't as public as me or who maybe aren't as involved as me, who are just, reacting, waiting for laws to change. And then they're, okay, well, this is good, this is bad. That's where I find the competition is obviously not helping us because there's just such a wide net of uncertainty. And so it doesn't necessarily make us look good when people are, for example, again, to be candid, I think a big issue in our industry is adult use of these products. So cannabis right now, hemp in Texas does not have age restrictions. I, as a business owner, have imposed self-regulation restrictions to only sell to 21 and over. Why 21 and over? Because alcohol and tobacco were 21 and over in the state of Texas. Are all my competitors doing the same thing? No. And so if you're someone listening and you own a cannabis brand, I was just on a call with someone who's a member of our organization the other day, and she's like, Shayda, my, competitor down the street is selling to 18 and over. And then those same consumers are coming into my shop and they're saying, why don't you sell to me? I'm 19. And so she's kind of like having this wrestling back and forth of, well, I know that there's not an explicit age, but I want to self-regulate and I want to be considered a good actor in this fight. And so that's kind of some of the nature, I think, of our industry, that we're just like very realistically navigating against, kind of also reflecting on my origin story as well. When we launched, I was looking around like, who else is doing this? Like, who's setting the pace? Who's setting the tone to be a business, to be compliant, to be regulated, to have these things enforced? Like, what are you selling to consumers? What are you saying to consumers? That's why I even mentioned that medical, kind of like clause, right? I can't say certain things because of being compliant in my industry, and I take compliance very seriously. I cannot say the same for other operators in the industry. And so I think that's where, for us as a business, it's ultimately exciting. Like, I look forward to these conversations because I just think any industry you're in, obviously, the more, kind of adult use, heightened industry you're in, the more I think eyes are on you because of the children. It just is like, this is par for the course, and I want to be involved and I have to speak up about these things. And so it just is for our industry, but ultimately it's a great thing. I think these are important conversations to have, and it reinforces that, man, we're trailblazing something new that nobody's really done before. And that's where I get to kind of hang my hat at the end of the day and be like, man, I'm exhausted, but yeah, like, we're doing some really cool work, and I'm really proud, like I said, to represent Texas and to be a female founder having that conversation.
Oh, that is really good insight, and I appreciate you kind of walking us through that and helping understand kind of the industry overall and some of the different things that are happening as just the industry itself develops over time, which is kind of cool to see. Well, Shane, I want to be respectful of our time, and I've got a few rapid fire questions I'd love to ask, just kind of pull some additional wisdom nuggets out for the audience. So I've got four of them in total for you here. The first one is, when you look back kind of along your journey overall, what would you say for you has kind of been your key to success?
My key to success is honestly just showing up. I think that when you get into entrepreneurship, you no longer have the boss, right? You become the boss, and you have to think through what you're doing, how you spend your time, how you spend your money, how you spend your resources. And I think it's really easy to want to obviously take maybe the easy way out, or to get discouraged if something is hard. And that, for me, has been a repetitive theme in this journey. It's just keep getting back up, keep fighting, keep advocating, uh, keep using your voice. I think, again, for me, I am beyond because, like, I already made that commitment. Like I said, I realize what I get to do is such a privilege and blessing. Um, and so I'm doing it to the best of my ability. But I also don't want to discredit that I still have those. Is this right? Like, is saying these things out loud right? Is that helping me, or is that creating more, just being realistic, just like more tension for me? Because I think when you use your voice, that obviously, there's a famous quote too. I think Brene Brown talks about, like, the man in the arena. It's like, when you're in the arena, everybody then wants to kind of mock you, but you're the one who's actually showing up to fight. You know what I mean? And so it's this weird, I'm doing this, but when I do this and I keep putting myself out there, sometimes it feels harder because I'm having more detractions or more kind of pushback. And so it's just like pushing through that resistance is what, obviously, I love working out. I think fitness is a really good theme in my life as well. Just like keep my body moving. So it's like, just show up and just keep moving. So a body in motion stays in motion. So if I can just keep getting back up, if I can just keep, taking the next best step forward, I might not know the next 5 steps or 3 steps, but that next one step, if I can just show up, keep moving, keep using my voice, rely on kind of my morals, my standards, my goals, I think that there's, some truth and pride in that you can't unwaver. And so it's just continuing, like, on that path.
Oh, I love that. How about advice? If you could give just one piece of advice that you could leave the audience with today, and I'm sure you could give more than one, but if you could just leave them with one today, what piece of advice would you want to leave the audience?
Oh, that's a stumping of a question, because I think I always, kind of reflect on encouraging people to show up. But I think I would say to people, as an extension of that, is to not give up. And maybe that's the pep talk that I need to hear myself today. So don't give up, give yourself the pep talk, keep getting yourself back out there. I think that business ownership is isolating to some extent. So maybe this is the direction that I'll start giving the advice. I have found that it is so encouraging to hang out with other business owners. So obviously, this podcast is a great extension of hearing other business owners' stories, which is so impactful, because I think it's a reminder of, oh my gosh, that woman maybe seems like she has all her shit together. And I'm here to be like, I don't, you know? And so it's like, like, you can just kind of like let loose and like let your guard down. So I think these conversations are obviously super important to just like what you listen to, it's like who you hang out with, what you eat, what you consume, like that defines you. And so what you listen to is important. So getting in a habit of listening to encouraging stories, relatable stories, both in your industry, out of your industry. But like the component piece to that would be getting out there and like networking with other business owners. So because we're in Austin, I have to give a huge shout out to Mark Nathan, being in the hemp cannabis space with a CPG product, so consumer packaged good. I love now seeing cannabis as a cannabis packaged good, so taking a lot of lessons learned from the CPG market. But the CPG community in Austin is so encouraging and so supportive, and Mark Nathan runs a really well run group that they have CPG morning meetups, they have afternoon happy hours. He's just a thoughtful human being in the CPG space who's always like, Shayda, like you can help this person. Or, hey, Shayda, you mentioned that you have this challenge. Well, I think you should meet this person. And just being in a network where you have resources, people who are looking out for you, people who you can kind of commiserate with and feel encouraged by, I think is so important. And so for me, the advice is find other entrepreneurial friends, make it a regular, schedule. Maybe it's monthly, it's weekly, it's a call, it's a coffee, it's, just a walk around town lake. Like go find those people and be encouraged by them, and also then pay it back and help use your story to encourage other people who might be struggling through entrepreneurship.
Oh, that is such a good piece of advice. And I will 100% echo it. The entrepreneurship can be very isolating and lonely. You have friends that aren't in it that just don't understand the frustrations and pains and things that you go through. So I totally love that piece of advice. Um, Book recommendations. When you think back on kind of books that have had an impact on you along the journey, it could be something that you're reading currently or read most recently. But if you could leave a book recommendation for the audience, what would you give them today?
Yes, I should give a shout out to my husband. My husband loves to read, and I'm more of like an audiobook podcast kind of gal. But we have created a habit where we're trying to obviously like read nightly. Maybe that's not, I don't know what I was going to say, obviously, like everybody knows. I'm like, obviously, you know this about me. You don't. So I think screen time, especially as an entrepreneur, is important. You're winding down. So that's just like an aside as well. Like creating space where you can disconnect from your devices and like from the business is really healthy. We sleep with our phones outside of our rooms, which can be a challenge if you're the business owner and you have a no shit moment and they can't call you. So take it with a grain of salt. You know what I mean? But on the book side, I'll refer to the book that I'm reading currently. It was recommended, I think it was on some list as like the best marketing book of 2023. It is called Unreasonable Hospitality,
Mm.
and it is by Will Guidara, and it's speaking about Michelin star restaurant in New York City. And just to paraphrase like some of like the takeaways, right? I think if you can look at your business, especially when you obviously have consumers that you're interacting with versus maybe you're selling like a digital, download or something, but like you are serving people and you have an opportunity to build loyalty with those consumers as well. And so it's like at first glance, like how do you serve the people that are coming into your space? So in our case, into our retail, e-commerce, with people who are landing on your website, like how do you care for them? What's the communication? What are those different touch points? And then obviously also like that dovetails into that loyalty and so repeatability, which I think is a huge tenant for every business owner. It's like, why would I go acquire a new customer when I could just keep this one who is spending and is loyal and wants to be loyal? And so this book for me has really highlighted a lot of really cool parallels between the restaurant hospitality industry and how do you see everyday general businesses through that hospitality lens. And again, like you are serving these people, they are coming to you. Kind of for your question earlier too, it's like, why would people come to you? It's like, because in our industry, they have a frustration, they have a problem, they have something that they cannot solve on their own. And so they're usually coming to us with some, kind of frustration, irritation, curiosity, of course. And so it's just like meeting them where they're at, being respectful of that journey, and then just like reinforcing, education with them, but also like that we see them and we want to help empower them. And so I think that book, 10 out of 10, can't recommend it enough for people who are, trying to deliver on hospitality and looking to serve their customers more.
I, that is fantastic. I believe that is on my list of like wish list books that I haven't quite gotten to yet. So I'm excited to hear another recommendation for it. Maybe I'll
Yes.
move up a little bit higher on my up next list.
That's fair. I
So
have like the habit of like buying a bunch of books and they're like piled on my dresser next to my bed. And Honestly, I'm like, why did I pick that one next? So it was like in my cycle of things. I don't know how to yellow cover. So kudos, when you're picking book covers for any aspiring authors out there, the book cover, kind of helps matter. And also, of course, recommendations by other people helping bump it up in the list. But yeah, of course, great book.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, Shayda, before we get to the final question, I always like to end kind of these conversations on for those that want to connect, that want to follow the work that y'all are doing, that want to, come experience CBD, THC, checking the products and things that you have, that want to just connect with you and be able to kind of make some connections there. Where can we advise them to go for more information and take some next steps?
Yeah, of course. Well, we are physically located in North Austin. You can find us on Google, Restart CBD and THC. Our website is restartcbd.com. Our Instagram is restartcbd as well. And then me, I'm involved obviously in the Texas Hemp Coalition, texashempcoalition.org for anyone who wants to learn more about our advocacy efforts. And then I love social media and Instagram. TikTok doesn't play super well with me because of censorship, unfortunately, that we navigate and have to deal with as business owners and operators in this industry. But Instagram has been a good-ish platform for me. So I'm at the Shayda Torabi for anyone who wants to follow along on any of my entrepreneurial journeys and efforts trailblazing in the cannabis industry here in Austin, Texas.
Beautiful. Well, I will put as much as I possibly can of that in the description of this conversation below. So once we wrap up, make sure you go click the links, check it all out. Give Shayda a follow here. Send a direct message. Say, hey, saw you on the Business Spotlight. Great conversation.
Please.
Make some connections. That's always like my favorite thing about the Business Spotlight and it being
Yes.
local here to the area. So
Yes, please
make some
reach out. I
connections there.
always encourage it. No, I love when people are like they I have to say this just because I feel like it's my duty. People want to glorify these podcasts and they're wonderful. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, I am honored to be here, but we're also just like humans, kind of like I said, just like figuring things out. And so absolutely take Tanner up, take me up, like slide into the DMs, get to know us, like make that relationship because entrepreneurship is isolating, and also we're just regular people who are just trying to figure it out and equally looking to build our network, so can't reinforce that point enough.
Whew, love that. Well, Shayda, as we wrap up, I like to finish on one final question, which is simply, what is most inspiring to you today?
I'm most inspired by the opportunity that I get to truly blaze a new trail in my home state, in my home city, for an industry that I am very passionate about. It is not an easy journey, but it is a journey that I'm very proud of. And to be able to do it with my family, to be able to do it with the support of my community, to be able to just champion this plant and help people see it in a different light is something that is very encouraging to me. And I hope was encouraging to those who listen to this conversation. And whether you consume cannabis or not, just hopefully it helped open your eyes and perspective to be a little bit more curious, because we do see a lot of power and potential with this plant. So we're just grateful that we get to have that conversation. And that's what really inspires me and encourages me to get up day after day, show up, keep working hard, keep defending, keep advocating, and representing cannabis and hemp in Texas as Restart. So thanks for having me, Tanner, and having a really great conversation around the business and entrepreneurial side of running our business and brand.
Well, I thank you. It's been genuinely a pleasure to have you and go through a bit of the story, a bit more depth on the business side of things, and just kind of some of the authentic experience that you've had, which I think is, as you've kind of stated, that actually hearing real stories, things like that, has been powerful. So I do want to say thank you again for taking the time.
Of course, happy to be here and excited to connect with everybody who's tuning in. Thanks, y'all.